I know even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity. The greatest of these is charity. Estelle Gleason was to learn the true meaning of the word. This is her story.
I am warning you, Major Howard. I have every intention of taking this matter to the highest court if need be. The whole idea is repugnant, to say the least. It seems to me that you Salvation Army people are determined to turn this neighborhood into a slum area.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
Well, I would say that. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Mrs. Gleason, the property adjacent to your home was bequeathed to us by
a sanctimonious old fool. I know all that. And I also know exactly why he did it.
Oh, please try to understand.
Oh, I do understand. Everett Hayes did this deliberately. You can be very sure that there was a method to his madness. He just wanted to ruin this neighborhood, to reduce the property values.
Oh, come now.
No, I mean it. I'm convinced he knew exactly what you people would do with this house. Hello? No, Dorothy, I can't talk to you just now. Let me call you back. I don't know when. I said I would call you back, and I will, when I can. Oh, that woman is such a nuisance. She has absolutely no regard for other people. If I had let her go on, she would have been on that phone for an hour whining about her troubles. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Major Howard, I assure you that I will take legal action to prevent you people from converting that property into a flop house for human derelicts.
The term flop house is hardly applicable, Mrs. Gleason. It's slated to become our new men's social service center.
Not if I can help it.
Oh, Mrs. Gleason, please be reasonable.
I am being reasonable. Oh, don't you see, Major? This is a residential district. In fact, at one time, it was a totally restricted area. Why, some of the finest old homes in the city are to be found right here on Brighton Boulevard.
Yes, I agree.
Then don't you think that the most logical, the most practical solution would be for you people to sell the house and open your service center in some other part of town?
Mm-hmm. If it were feasible, yes.
Well, then?
Well, unfortunately, we can't do that, Mrs. Gleason.
Why not?
A legal technicality.
What do you mean?
Well, according to the terms and conditions of Mr. Hayes' will, the Salvation Army is not authorized to dispose of the property. It must be used for the purpose specified in the will.
Mm-hmm. I knew it. I just knew it. I told you he did it deliberately and maliciously. That man was downright evil.
Mrs. Gleason, a vindictive attitude is not going to help matters.
Then you feel there is no possible way to change this situation?
I'm afraid not.
Very well. But please remember what I told you, Major Howard. I will not give up. Not without a fight.
A determined, or perhaps we should say obstinate woman, Estelle Gleason did everything in her power to make good her threat. Her eccentric behavior was emphasized even more strongly by the fact that most of the houses in the neighborhood had for some time been vacant or were up for sale. Estelle refused to accept the inevitable and sought the help of influential friends, but to no avail. In the final desperate move to achieve her goal, she even went so far as to contact the office of the building commissioner in a vain effort to have the property condemned. In the interim, work had already begun on converting the huge mansion into what it was destined to become, a social service center for men in need of spiritual and physical rehabilitation. One day, as scaffolding was being erected around the exterior of the building, one of the laborers was injured, and two of his co-workers ran to get help.
Hey, Jerry, let's try this house. There's no for sale sign, so somebody must live here. We gotta get to a phone.
It doesn't look like there's anybody there either. Look, the shades are all pulled down. Looks kind of spooky if you ask me.
I didn't ask you. Come on. Wally's in rough shape. We gotta get him to a doctor. Fast.
Yes, what is it?
I'm sorry to trouble you, ma'am, but we're from next door.
I know where you're from. What do you want?
May I use your telephone? It's an emergency.
No, you may not use my telephone. I am not running a free service.
But, ma'am, this is important.
Hey, lady, one of our buddies is hurt. We have to
I
find...
don't care what your reasons are. The answer is no. Yes? What do you want?
Mrs. Gleason, I'd like to see you for a moment, if I may.
Major Howard, I don't believe that I would be the least bit interested in anything you had to say to me.
I'm sorry to hear that, since the matter concerns your late husband.
Robert? I don't understand.
May I come in?
Well, why, yes, of course.
I learned something very interesting about your husband, Mrs. Gleason.
Oh, really? And what was that?
Tell me, were you at all familiar with his business activities?
No. He never discussed his business affairs with me. There was no reason why he should. What in heaven's name would I know about the contracting business? But, Major, I really don't understand. What has this got to do...
I never knew your husband, nor did I know anything about him until today.
This is all very puzzling to me. Are you by any chance making some kind of accusation?
If a man can stand accused of being a great humanitarian, then I'd say that your late husband was indeed guilty.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, today I learned that Robert Gleason was a staunch supporter of our rehabilitation program, that for many years he provided employment for the countless people we sent to him. He never turned anyone down in time of need.
I never knew that, Major, but then it was typical of Robert. So typical of him to help people and not to say anything about it. Thank you. Thank you for telling me.
You know where I obtained this information?
Well, I would assume it came from your files. I should imagine the Salvation Army would keep records of such matters.
We do. But I first learned of your husband's concern for the underprivileged from a man named Wally Stoner.
Stoner? I'm afraid the name is not familiar to me. Was he one of Robert's friends?
In a way, yes. You see, Mrs. Gleason, when I visited Wally in the hospital this morning, he told me how your husband had helped and how you had refused.
What?
Well, yesterday afternoon, two of our workmen from next door came here and asked if they might use your telephone
And I refused. Oh, Major, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. How could I have done such a thing? Men told me it was an emergency, but I completely ignored their plea.
Well, now, you mustn't really...
Oh, what a selfish, obstinate old woman I've become. My behavior is certainly no tribute to my husband Robert's memory.
Mrs. Gleason, don't be too harsh with yourself. You realize now that you made a mistake, and you're sorry, genuinely sorry.
Oh, yes, Major. If there were only something I could do, but it's rather too late now.
No, it's never too late, Mrs. Gleason. Never too late. And there is something you can do. You can pray for forgiveness and promise yourself to be more charitable in the future. You mustn't go on punishing yourself. Several weeks passed, and Estelle shut herself off completely from the outside world. Then, one morning, as the workmen were adding the finishing touches to the new men's social service center adjacent to the Gleason property, one of them called out suddenly.
Hey, Jerry, look! Look over there! The old lady's house is on fire.
You've been listening to the first act of The Greatest of These, today's C.P. McGregor Studios presentation for the Salvation Army. The second act of our story in a moment. And I'd like to take that moment to talk a little bit about the Salvation Army's men's social service centers mentioned in the first act of our story. The men's social service centers are located in many cities and towns around the country, and their pickup and repair of your donated discards are the means to an end for many who are homeless and downtrodden. And with the centers, this end is the complete rehabilitation of men who, for a variety of reasons, have lost their grip on life through accident, failures, psychological problems, and many other circumstances. These men have lost the ability to function in our society. Many are alcoholics. Many are just totally defeated and have lost the will to try. Through a well-planned program of physical and spiritual rehabilitation, including decent food, clothing, and shelter, the dignity of earning their way by repairing the salvaged articles, psychological and spiritual counseling, and guidance by doctors and Salvation Army officers, thousands of men each year regain the courage and ability to return to a normal life. Remember, your generous donations help to make these things possible. And now back to the second act of our story, the greatest of these.
Oh, man. I hope somebody has the good sense to call the fire department. That house could burn to the ground at any minute.
So who's to call? The old lady's the only one around here who's got a phone, remember? Most of these places are empty. Besides, she probably isn't even home.
We can't count on probabilities, Jerry. She might have passed out in here. Come on. Oh, look, we're wasting time. We're just gonna have to force the door open.
What? Sure. Force the door open and probably get a bowling out for destroying her property. You crazy?
You and your probablys. Come on, knock it off, will you? That old woman's life may be in danger. You're making cheap jokes. Come on. Put your shoulder up against the door. Push!
Right. Okay, here goes.
This place is filled with smoke. Lady! Hey, lady! Ma'am, Lady, are you in here?
Hey, Dave, I'll go this way. Now you check around over there.
Wait a minute, Jerry. Hey, here she is. She's in this room. Come back. Come back and give me a hand.
Is she okay?
I don't know. Looks like she's unconscious. Let's get her out of here. Come on. Easy now. Remember, she's an old lady. These people are kind of fragile. She's heavy. Let's put her down here. She's barely breathing. I'd better go back. I'll go in and call for an ambulance.
Hey, Dave, are you nuts? You can't go back in there. Hey, are you crazy? You're going to get hurt.
David Kinney rushed back into the burning building, again risking his own life, to make the all-important telephone call which was to save the life of another. And David did get hurt, seriously hurt. When he was finally taken to the hospital with third-degree burns, his condition was listed as extremely critical. On the other hand, Estelle Gleason was much more fortunate. She suffered only minor burns, and within a short time was discharged from the hospital. In view of the fact that her home had burned to the ground, Estelle had to make immediate arrangements for new living quarters. Yes?
Good afternoon, Major. May I see you for a moment or two?
Oh, of course, Miss Gleason, of course. Please come in.
Thank you.
I think you'll find that chair the most comfortable. In fact, it's my favorite. And speaking of comfort, how do you like your new home?
Oh, Major Howard, I just can't tell you how grateful I am.
I had a feeling you'd like it.
Like it? I love it. I can't thank you enough for suggesting Silvercrest residence. I had no idea the Salvation Army operated a home like this for senior citizens. Simply beautiful. And to think that I've been cooped up in that old house all these years. I feel like an entirely different person. As though I'd just joined the human race again.
Well, that seems to be a familiar song, Mrs. Gleason. I constantly hear people singing the praises of Silvercrest. If they're not expressing surprise over the reasonable rental arrangements, they're raving over the quality of the food served in the dining room.
And the people, they all seem so carefree and happy. I believe that I've made more friends in the past week than ever before. And I'm not exaggerating.
I'm very happy for you.
Now, Major, as you know, my home on Brighton Boulevard was completely gutted by fire.
Yes, I know you lost everything.
Not quite everything. I believe I found my self-respect. Now, my point is this. Since I am certainly not going to build another house on the property, I would like to donate it to the Salvation Army.
Well, that's most generous of you, Mrs. Gleason.
I don't know whether it's generous or not. Perhaps it's because my conscience bothers me. I honestly can't say. But the fact remains that I've already discussed the matter with my lawyer, and just as soon as it can be arranged, the deed to the property will be in your hands. I haven't the slightest idea what she'll do with it, but I'm sure you'll think of something. And, Major, about that boy, the boy who risked his life to get me to the hospital, is there anything I can do for him?
Well, yes, there is something you can do for David.
Oh, I know what you're going to tell me, that I should pray.
That's right. Your prayers would help.
Well, of course, I am praying for the boy's recovery, Major, but frankly, I was thinking in terms of something more tangible.
Mrs. Gleason, this may sound strange to you, but even a bit unorthodox, perhaps, but there's nothing more tangible than prayer. The results of heartfelt prayer always manifest in a tangible manner.
What do you mean?
Well, let me put it this way. Let's say that you consider the number of invalids who have been healed because of their unwavering faith in the power of prayer. Wouldn't you feel that these are tangible results?
Oh, yes, Major, but I meant something like charity, some charitable act. Now, you told me yourself that David and his friend were both part of your rehabilitation program and needed help. Well, I certainly can afford it. I've more than enough to last me for the rest of my days, and I think it's about time that I become charitable.
The greatest of these.
I beg your pardon?
Mrs. Gleason, I'd like to define for you the true meaning of charity. To give to help others is charitable, but to give of ourselves to help others is charity. David Kinney is a perfect example of the real meaning of the word. You see, his selfless act in rescuing you from the fire was an act of love, genuine concern for a fellow being. That is true charity, something money cannot buy.
I shall always be grateful to that boy.
David Kinney may recover, but he needs your prayers, Mrs. Gleason. And the results of your prayers are also something money cannot buy. It was some time before David had recovered sufficiently to receive visitors. But the day finally came when his friends could see him. First to arrive at the hospital was Jerry Cole, the young man who had helped David to rescue Estelle Gleason.
Well, hello there, Dave. Hi, Jerry.
How does it feel to be a hero?
I can't feel anything with all these bandages. I guess I must look like something from outer space.
Hey, I hadn't thought of that, but come to think of it, you do.
Same old Jerry. I might have expected that from you.
Well, you started it.
Hey, about that hero stuff, I didn't do it all alone, you know. I tell you what, if they give me a medal, I'll split it with you, okay?
Oh, no, you keep it. Any nut who's crazy enough to barge into a burning building just to use a telephone deserves to have a medal of his own. Hey, seriously, buddy, all kidding aside, how do you feel?
Well, Dr. Gifford told me I nearly didn't make it.
Yeah, I know.
He said there's going to have to be a lot of skin graft work, but, well, I'm going to be okay.
Hey, I'm really glad to hear it. Believe me. Hey, you know, Major Howard told me that old lady's been really worried about you. I mean, she...
come in.
David, I brought you a visitor. She said she couldn't wait another day. This is Mrs. Gleason.
Oh, I am so thankful you are getting better, Mr. Kinney. I've been praying for your recovery.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Gleason. I sincerely do appreciate your prayers.
And this is Jerry Cole. He's the other young man I told you about.
How do you do, Mr. Cole?
Ma'am?
I'm grateful to both of you, and especially to you, Major.
Please sit down, Mrs. Gleason.
Thank you.
How are you feeling, by the way?
Me? Oh, I've never felt better. I must say, though, I've been very worried about you.
Yeah, that's what Jerry was telling me just before you came in.
I mentioned to Major Howard that I wanted to try and reward you two boys in some way, and I...
Man, look, we're not looking for any reward. We're just glad we got to you in time, that's all. Isn't that right, Jerry?
Oh, yeah, right.
I am still going to do something, and I am sure that the Major will bear me out when I tell you that I'm a very determined woman.
Some call it determined, yes. In any event, her mind's made up, so I advise you both to listen carefully.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, first of all, Mr. Kim...
I wish you'd call me David.
All right, David. Major Howard told me of your plans to finish your education, and I want to help.
Well, that's very kind of you, Mrs. Gleason, but...
No arguments, young man.
Yes, ma'am.
And as for you, Jerry, I understand you're interested in becoming an accountant. Is that right?
Well, I was, yes, but that's too late now.
Oh, nonsense, it's never too late. Isn't that what you say, Major?
That's what I say.
But you see, Mrs. Gleason, I got into some trouble with the police.
I know all about it, Jerry. But as Major Howard once said, you made a mistake and you're sorry. Now, I'm sure you've heard the expression, when you're down, there's no place else to go but up. And that is just where you two boys are going. Oh, now, please let me help you, because I have been helped. More than I can say.
Well, thank you.
And I promise you, I give you my solemn word, the next time you ask to use my telephone, I won't say no.
That was the second and final act of The Greatest of These, a radio play by Dick Nelson. Alice Reinhardt played the part of Estelle Gleason, and Barney Phillips was featured as Major Howard. Jerry Dexter and Casey Kasem completed our cast. Heartbeat Theater was produced by the C.P. McGregor Studios in Hollywood and directed by Don Hills. Please join us next week for another Heartbeat Theater story. Until then, this is your host, Marvin Miller, wishing you a very pleasant week. I know, even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, charity.